How's everybody doing? Yeah, it's good to be out here. You know, I've had been on the road quite a bit. For those of you, I'm sure a lot of you know, this is a quite a big district. The best part about this is getting out there and really connecting and meeting with folks, listening, getting a sense of all the issues, and it's a real thrill to be out here. You know, we are trying incredibly hard to have a presence everywhere as we think is appropriate. And as I'm sure many of you know, this is not what the current congressman likes to do. He's not a fan of extending himself. He's not a fan of showing up and listening and being accounted for. He's not a fan of explaining his record. And we can't afford that type of absentee congressperson. Not in this environment, not any time, but particularly in this environment where we have real problems that need to be solved. When people are looking for folks who are solutions oriented, who are thinking critically about how to fight for working folk and not fight for big corporations or big corporate farms or anybody whose interests aren't aligned with the folks here all across this district. I think we appreciate the stakes right now. They're about as high as they possibly can be. The level of cruelty, the level of immorality, the level of corruption, the level of chaos that is coursing through the political climate is at an all-time high. When you can take health care away from those who need it the most, to do a tax break for a wealthy few, when you can separate children from their parents, when you can increase work requirements for SNAP recipients, when you can break the backs of working and middle-class folks to do a tax break for a wealthy few, all of those things are backwards in a time where there is more and more need for real opportunity. With all the inequality we have going on in this country, when 80% of folks are sharing 10% of the wealth, when 2/3 of folks are living paycheck to paycheck, the last thing we need is a cash grab for those who don't need any assistance at the expense of working class folk, at the expense of our future. When you add $1.5 trillion to our deficit and then want to turn around and say, oh, sorry, we have to cut Medicare now, cut Social Security, cut Meals on Wheels, cut workforce development programs, you mean cut our future. For who? For what benefit? Now, Fazzo has walked and gone around this district, well, I shouldn't say going around, I should say has spoken about this district from some dark room somewhere, and opined that the upstate New York economy is booming. Now that made me ask myself, well, for who? Who is the upstate economy booming for? And he cites to the stock market. Oh, that's nice. You know, when top 10% own 84% of all the stocks. I'm not sure if that's the right indicator. Well, let's look at full employment. Well, let's see. Let's dig under the hood there. And what do you get? You get folks piecing together 3 or 4 part-time jobs to pay rent and take care of their health care and put food on their kids' table. That's not full employment, that's scraping by. But I guess when you are working on behalf of big corporations and special interests, from their vantage point, the economy is booming, so he speaks for them. That's who he speaks for. Now we're talking about somebody who is the deciding vote to take away guaranteed protections for pre-existing conditions. We're talking about somebody who is the deciding vote to increase the cost of health care and to roll back the expansion of Medicaid. He's the deciding vote after promising us he wouldn't do it. He lied. So it's not just about the fact that we're not fighting to expand health care and fighting for universal affordable health care. We got a guy right here in our midst who's taking it away from people. He's not talking about how to expand it. He's not talking about how to bring down costs. He's talking about how to take it away from people in the midst of all this pain. He talks about how we can restore jobs and good wages, but what's the plan? Where's the plan for that? Is he talking about infrastructure? I don't hear that. What about investing in our roads and our rail? Investing in broadband access and cell service? We can pay for these things if you don't give $1.5 trillion away in a tax scam, or if you close the corporate loopholes, or if you make corporations pay what they're obligated to pay under the law. We can pay for these things. We can invest in work development programs. We can invest in our public schools. We could be doing these things if you actually cared about our future, Mr. Fazzo, but you don't seem to. He sits on the Agriculture Committee. That's all he does on that committee. He walks around and touts that as if it's a thing. Well, you know, the whole point of being on that committee is to fight for your farmers, not the farmers who live elsewhere and are mega corporate farmers and dealing big commodities and need all these subsidies. They don't need them. 40% of the subsidies in the Farm Bill goes to the 3% of the wealthiest farmers in the country. It's just another giveaway to big corporations in the form of agricultural space. What about the small and mid-tier farmers who make up this community? The folks who need proper funding from their representative in the government, whether it's food promotion programs that help with farmers markets and selling our goods locally, and infrastructure that allows us to build out our regional distribution and processing plants, to tap into markets that are not too far away from here where we have billions of dollars of unmet demand in local and organically grown food. What about the dairy farmers who are catching a lot of it right now with the plummeting dairy prices? What's the plan for that? Why is he talking about a floor, a price floor for insurance to make sure we can at least have some sort of safety net there? He's not talking about these things. He sits on the bipartisan climate change solution. Again, another example of sitting and doing nothing. It's cover for an individual who has a career of lobbying for oil pipelines. Now, I don't know how you can lobby for oil pipelines and then turn around and say, I'm going to be an advocate for renewable energy, particularly when his behavior, his voting record suggests otherwise. He rolls back the Clean Water Rule, which is supposed to make sure that our wetlands are restored, which helps keep our waters from being polluted. He rolls back the Stream Protection Rule, which makes sure that companies who do mining have to restore the streams where they found them, in the same state, so we don't drink polluted water. Not a peep about the assault on the EPA, not a peep about how we actually deal with the climate change crisis from him. Talking about maybe shifting those billions of dollars we prop up in tax credits and subsidies for fossil fuel over to renewable energy. That doesn't come out of his mouth. He appears dead set on holding on to now, maintaining the status quo. But the status quo was broken. You know, when I was growing up, different world. I grew up in a working class family. My parents worked for GE back when GE and IBM's were in upstate and before they left. The world changed quite a bit. Globalization happened. Technology got to advance to a point you can invest in wealth and capital. And we stopped investing in people. We stopped investing in working folk. We stopped investing in community for a very long time, for decades. And the more and more wealth saturated our politics, and the fewer and fewer people had wealth, we shifted away from being a true democracy to being ruled by just wealthy few. And that's why we're not talking as a country about how we solve the healthcare crisis in a meaningful way, or how we solve the climate change crisis. We had 3 debates on the presidential level, no question asked about the environment. No question asked about education, which I can tell you growing up, when I was coming of age, was the great equalizer, the gateway to opportunity. That's how you made your way. That's how you can count on a better quality of life than those who came before you. What happened to that story? What happened to it? We got too many folks like John Fazio there. That's what happened to them. They don't get it. And this is not about sitting up here bashing Mr. John Fazio. I'm just sharing facts. You know, I'm not making anything up. Okay? I'm not mischaracterizing his record, or I'm just telling you the truth. But they like to deal in misinformation and nastiness and ugliness and smear tactics because they don't want to talk about the issues. Anything but the issues. Or they don't want to go anywhere near health care or the environment or good jobs and good wages. Well, it's a wonder why the record speaks for itself. There's nothing for him to say on that. There's nothing for him to stand on. There's no substance there to stand on. So when you don't have the substance, what do? You appeal to hate and divisiveness, anything but the substance. Good news is, we got a lot of substance to stand on. And I'm a pretty disciplined guy. I'm not going to move off of this substance stuff. I like substance. I like the issues. I like fighting for what I know I hear on the ground people need, and what they want from their representative. And we are doing something that I think can change the course for a very long time, all throughout this area. Make no mistake about it, there's a clear choice right now. A clear choice. I spent a year and a half running with Democrats, like-minded individuals who shared more or less the same worldview. Not a lot to distinguish us. That couldn't be further from the truth right now. I am about as far away from where John Fazio stands on the issues as anybody can be. It's a real contrast here. And we have a chance at real change. Positive change. Change that can build for the future as opposed to holding on to now at our future's expense. And I got news for you. I'm sure you're aware of this, but I'm happy to share it with you. It's electric out there. It is. I'm getting the front row seat everywhere I go all across this district. I am feeling the enthusiasm, the excitement. People, I think, appreciate what's on the line right now. Not just for the sake of the country, which obviously is significant, but for right here at home. Because Fazio is not just some innocent bystander in all of this. He is part of the problem. Very much a part of the problem. And we could change that in November. We could change that by doing the work. By getting out there, continuing to knock on the doors, making the phone calls. In August alone, we knocked on over 13,000 doors and made over 32,000 phone calls, over 500 volunteers. There's a movement building here from end to end all across this district. We just got to believe. We just got to really invest in how important this moment is right now. We need to own it and be the values that we know we are, be the principles that we know we are, and build a better future for our children and our grandchildren. So I'm excited to be here. It's, I think, Tuesday is 7 weeks out. That's it. Yeah, wow. It's not that far away. And I've been running for a long time. 19 months or so, around there. We can see the finish line. We can see it. You know, for those long distance runners, there's a while you don't see anything. You just see air, trees. But when you start to see that finish line in front of you, get you an extra boost of energy. That's where we are right now. We can see the finish line. All we got to do is pick up the pace. Pick up the pace. Stay focused. Connect. Lead with love. Not anger. Be positive. Be full of enthusiasm. Full of determination. And recognize that we can turn this thing around in a major, major way. So thank you all.